Welcome back to Purrfect Takes. I'm your host, Stephen Patton, joined as always by my co-host and dear friend, Jacob LaQuire. It's a hot Thursday afternoon. The weather has been obnoxiously ridiculous. It feels like you're swimming out here in North Carolina. Did, on the topic of heating up, have a really amazing burger at Ace. It's a good burger joint in the area. Check them out. We are not sponsored by them, just more something and the thoughts of summer and the things that go along with it, whether it be food or just activities. That was really good. Any new bites, things you've checked out recently, Jacob?
I've been to the same old places, but had some new meals at some of the places I go to, like Angry Ales, probably our favorite sports bar in Charlotte. Again, no free advertising. We just like those places. But yeah, it is hot outside. Word to Gunna, word to Young Thug from their song, I don't know, 5 years ago now. And with that in mind, it's time to draft the defenses to complement the offenses we took last week. And so these are the rules to anyone watching. If you didn't catch them in the first time, we are awarding points to the players and coaches we draft. If you want a major award like MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, or Coach of the Year in the defensive play caller's case, that's 5 points. First team All-Pro, 3 points. Second team All-Pro is 2 points. And Pro Bowl, like going to the Pro Bowl but not as a replacement, is worth 1 point. If you're a replacement, that's 0. This one's going to be a little bit different because last week we had like a pretty set formula for the offense, right? We had 11 personnel plus some receivers plus a couple of tight ends. So you could run air raid, you could run 22, 23 personnel, what have you. This time it's a little bit different. We have 1 nose tackle, 3 defensive linemen, who put their hand in the dirt, 3 edge rushers. They can be defensive ends or outside linebackers, 2 regular straight up linebackers, talking about the Keekleys, the Ray Lewises, those kind of guys, 2 corners, 2 safeties, 2 extra defensive backs. They could be like nickel corners. They could be another safety, another corner, even a big linebacker if you wanted it to be. And then finally, we have to pick the play caller, the defensive play caller last. So that means since Steven went first on the last one, I'm going first this time, and I will also have the last pick. So whatever team is left, that's the coach I'm going to end up with. So I have to kind of game it a little bit to see if I can knock some of the bad coaches out of the way so I get a good one at the end there. But I think I've explained it pretty well. Anything you want to add, Steve, before we get into it with the first overall pick, which belongs to me this week?
I mean, we're gonna hop into it. This compared to last week, it felt like you could kind of gauge who's going to go where. With this one, because I think there's an element of scarcity at different positions with different teams, that why I think like a Myles Garrett, a Micah Parsons is valuable. I'd honestly be shocked to see him go in the top 5 in an exercise like this, just because of how many other talented players you can get that will probably be first team all pros. And when you look at the scoring system, that's up there, not necessarily with your defensive player of the year awards and MVPs, but only one dude's winning that. So like, do you want to really like throw your hat in for like the odds of winning that, or just that constant 3 points from the all pro?
I couldn't agree more. I think the issue of scarcity is something that I thought of when I tried to order my picks here. In particular, if you look at our board here, we have 7 linemen, if you want to count edges as linemen, like down linemen. And we have 6 people in the secondary, if you want to count those extra DBs as solely secondary pieces. That leaves 2 spots for the stand-up linebacker, the middle linebacker, inside linebacker, whatever you want to call it. And really, there's only 2 worthy first team all pro guys of that caliber in the league right now, in my opinion. And so with the first overall pick, I'm looking to tackle that issue of scarcity and find somebody who stands in the middle and gets a ton of tackles. He can rack up some sacks. He's a really good blitzer. He's really good in coverage. And with that in mind, I am taking who I believe to be the best linebacker in football, not who the GMs and stuff voted, because I think they're still living in the past like 3 years ago. And I am going Roquan Smith from the Baltimore Ravens with the first overall pick in our defensive draft.
Wow. So you're removing, I think, a better player on that team who I think would be a lock regardless at potentially another position of value here. So I'm a little bit
Well,
shocked you go
that's part
Roquan.
of the strategy as well. Not only removing Kyle Hamilton, who is one of the better safeties, maybe the best safety, you're removing Marlon Humphrey, who was an All-Pro last year, who could have been a nickel corner. You're removing somebody like Namadi Madubuike, who's a really good defensive lineman. So I think what I'm doing here, you're also taking away their defensive coordinator. So I think I'm taking away a lot here while maintaining the best player at a scarce position.
I like it. I'm not gonna lie. I think pick 3, I was gonna go Kyle Hamilton, just because I saw value in building the back end of the defense. I felt like there were competent linebackers that I think are deserving of second team All Pros and Pro Bowl votes, to where it wasn't as scarce a position, but definitely needed to be addressed early on. My first overall pick is a guy that I think is going to be in contention for the Defensive Player of the Year. Just helped his team win the Super Bowl. And I think if he puts up insane numbers from a pressure standpoint and sack standpoint, Jalen Carter is a guy that I think can generate a lot of points on this list. So my first pick is going to be Jalen Carter. And then I am going to address the linebacker position now that a run has been made. I'm going to take Fred Warner with the San Francisco 49ers, taking a Nick Bosa off the board, Robert Saleh, if you will. But I think in this case, this is a team that didn't have a ton of star talent on that side of the ball.
I like it. I had anticipated that you would have gone Fred Warner pretty early. I think he's one of your more favorite players around the league, right? I think used to, or not to like put us against each other. I think you believe he's the best linebacker in football, and he's certainly one of the top 2. I would have him number 2, so I don't mind that choice there. Jalen Carter, I think, is good as well. One of the best down linemen, defensive linemen in the league. I think we can both agree. And now that I'm comfortable that I have one of the 2 main stand-up linebackers, right, I can look to address something else now with picks 4 and 5. And one of the things I was considering at pick 1, I actually thought pretty long about it, was the guy I'm about to take at number 4, and that is Will Anderson Jr. of the Houston Texans. This is a guy that I think both of us think can really contend for Defensive Player of the Year this year. Going into year 3, still super young, and really, really good player there. They have some good players on their team as well, so I'm eliminating guys like Danielle Hunter, Derek Stingley, who was just supplanted as the highest paid corner by Sauce Gardner either yesterday or Tuesday. It would have been Tuesday because that's when we recorded. But I'm pretty happy to get Will Anderson here. And then pick 5, I think, is going to be the tough spot for me here. I kind of have to think about it a little bit. Just kidding. I don't have to think about it a ton. It is going to be the best corner in the National Football League. Patrick Surtain is going to be the 5th overall pick.
I like it. We'll see if for some reason I don't see a reason for him regressing. I could see issues with maybe the unit around him with injuries and whatnot that puts a lot more on his plate or puts him in precarious situations. But overall, this is a reigning Defensive Player of the Year award, one of the best man corner covers right now. And I think he's only getting better. So this is an excellent pick here to end your kind of round 2. And to kick off my round 2 in this draft, I'm going to take a guy that maybe wasn't as obvious, but because I think, again, the scarcity at the safety position is not being talked about enough, I'm going to take Budda Baker out of Arizona.
Okay.
I'm going to take a guy that I think is going to, again, be another first-team All-Pro. He's an excellent free safety, and with what the Cardinals have done up front, I think he's going to look even better than he has in the past couple of years. So he's underrated. Again, lends itself to the scarcity topic that we've kind of addressed with some of these positions. But then to go right back, I think, into the trenches, I think I'm going to do it just simply because I think he's just that good, not because he's gotten the All-Pro recognition yet, but Dexter Lawrence. I think when you look at Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, like, who are you going to block? And I think Dexter Lawrence is only going to have maybe a double team. He's not going to be able to be triple teamed. And that's going to allow him to still get after the quarterback in a very meaningful way that'll generate some crazy numbers, because up until his injury last year, this was a guy that I think was towards the top of the league in sacks at the nose tackle spot.
For sure. You talk about scarcity. This is probably the most scarce position out of all the ones we're going to tackle today. With that in mind, my next pick is going to be pretty obvious here at pick number 8. I want to just make sure that I get a nose tackle, so I'm not forced to pick somebody else later in the draft here. I'm going to go Vita Vea at pick 8. Yeah. Once I had a plan in mind that once you picked Dexter Lawrence, because I knew you would, I had to pick Vea immediately after. So I'm not disappointed with that one whatsoever. And then after this, I think we're up in the air a little bit, right? Because there's still a depth of good players left on the board at premium positions. I'm just trying to figure out which way I want to go at this point. I'm looking at safeties, right? Because safeties are pretty scarce. I could see somebody. I'm not going to say the people out loud because that might give you ideas. But I'm really honing in
for the listeners. Why you're looking at the safeties, those defensive spots, that defensive back spots, that can be another safety, that can be another corner. I think we even talked about technically one of those defensive backs could be a linebacker, like a hybrid type guy, like an Isaiah Simmons, even though he's not going to crack either of our lists. But that's just something to keep in mind for our audience, that is a little bit more fluid compared to the rest of the defensive positions.
For sure. This is a tough spot that I'm in. Well, I'm just deciding what safety that I would consider here. And what would be the other position you take outside of safety? Like, give yourself some more time, get your other pick in, and then let's figure out the safety. Well, I took Vea, so now.
Oh, that's right.
Pick
yeah,
9.
I apologize.
I actually am going to go in a different direction than safety. I'm going to grab who I think is the third best linebacker, and I think has a good chance at being another All-Pro. I'm going to get Frankie Louvu. He's pretty versatile, and now that I don't have to worry about linebacker throughout the rest of the exercise, I can start to open up more of the front players and the back end players, because that's really the meat of our teams here. Now that I have linebacker out of the way, I can really hone in on those positions.
I like it. That was definitely a guy that I was keying in on. So good job at getting that. But I'm going to start this off. I'm going to get Christian Gonzalez, a guy that I think was second team All-Pro last year, is going to take another step this year. So cornerback 1 for me. I think he continues to take a step there. I'm also going to take it's like, do I stay in the secondary? Do I make a pivot here? Let's go Trent McDuffie with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm going to get 2 corners right here, right out of the way. And I'll list them as a cornerback for now. And then if I draft another cornerback, I'll just list them as a defensive back.
I like it. To be clear, you're listing him as a corner. We don't have to specify nickel because that's just thrown into the DB spot, right? But to be clear, you are taking him as in your corner spot here that we're writing in this little dark brown, burnt orange category here. I like that.
The best way to I'm thinking about it is like, I love the L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie pairing, where you have that big physical corner on the perimeter that can take away the person that you're sticking at the X position. And then I feel like Trent McDuffie has the fluidity to follow a guy outside to inside. And like you said, I think he works best playing from the slot, but having that versatility at the cornerback 2 position, I think is really key here.
I like that a lot. With that in mind, I'm going to be attacking corner here with my next 2 picks, I think. Certainly with my first one here, I'm going to get the guy who just made his payday. I'm going to get Sauce Gardner this will be pick 12, I believe, as my corner 2. He's not the locked in All-Pro that he was to start his career, but he's certainly worthy of a Pro Bowl vote every single year. And I think that's a good value here at pick 12. And then I'm thinking a lot about corner here still, because there are quite a few good players, but I'm also looking and seeing that I'm missing one position in particular. and that is the down lineman, the defensive lineman. So I'm kind of honing in on those guys as well. I think that, man, I'm really torn here between two Seattle Seahawks players, to be quite frank. But I think I'm going to go with another defensive back. So I'm going to use my first defensive back spot here. Our first.
Brian Branch, just get out of the way.
I'm going Devin
Oh,
Witherspoon.
wow.
With the Seattle Seahawks.
Wow.
And that
Okay,
is
never
13,
mind.
I believe. Yeah, I want to take away Mike McDaniel. I want to take away Leonard Williams. And I want to get 3, I would say, surefire corners that are going to be guaranteed Pro Bowlers out of the way quick.
I like it. I like it. I legitimately thought you were going to go Brian Branch. I did not think he was going to make it there at that turn. And so I think value-wise, we'll just keep it with defensive backs before I start addressing the defensive line and the front a little bit more. And I'm going to take Brian Branch. He's going to be my first defensive back here. And I think he is that versatile piece where I can be a nickel and feel okay against stopping the run, because he is a violent downfield player on top of just being a very smart, athletic dude in coverage. So I love his versatility at linebacker. We're going to wrap this up and get Terrell Bernard. I know it's another Mike linebacker, but I think when you have two really, really good, not only athletic linebackers that can go sideline to sideline, but smart players at their position that can diagnose what's going on pre-snap and then attack. I just love that pairing right in the middle of the defense.
I'm actually kind of disappointed that you chose him, because I was thinking of getting Taron Johnson quite a bit later. I didn't know if he was on your radar or not. So I'm a little bit disappointed that the Bills are gone at this point. But that opens up some areas on the defensive front for me to address, because I only have the one guy outside of my nose tackle taken to this point. And man, looking at our board here, I think we had the same thoughts. Like, let's leave some of the good edge rushers open later down the line. And I'm going to go ahead and take 2 of them off the board right now. I think the first one naturally has to be Myles Garrett. I think both of us agree that he is one of, if not the best in the game right now at the edge rusher position, excuse me. And I can't see a way that he fails this season outside of knocking on wood, like an injury, right? I think they did a good job putting Mason Graham beside him, so he doesn't have to have constant triple teams and stuff like that. And I'm just a big fan of what he does down in and down out. Now it's kind of tough, because I got to decide between really 3 edge rushers here that I want to pick. And to be clear, when I don't know if I'm picking Micah Parsons right now, but he will be listed as an edge rusher, not like DB or any, like, because we kind of talked about how DB can be a nickel linebacker. We know Parsons started his career as a stand-up linebacker, but he will be listed as an edge rusher if we go in that direction. But I think I'm going to take somebody who's been a bit more of an Iron Man throughout his career. And I'm going to go with a guy that got an extension this offseason. This offseason. Max Crosby. Going to get that one out of the way now that the Raiders are kind of building something there. I didn't want to be stuck with the Raiders there at the end. So I'm just going to grab Max Crosby now.
Okay. Well, then we'll just kick this off. We'll take Micah Parsons to kick off this next round. Like you said, definitely torn between probably those 2 at that pick. Both are excellent players. I feel like Max Crosby's a better overall player, especially when you look at just the run game. And he's got a relentless motor. That guy doesn't stop. But Parsons off the edge, really, really hard to block, has a great bend, great burst. There's a reason why he's talked about as a guy that's going to get paid $40+ million, like Jamar Chase and Myles Garrett were this past offseason. Obviously, I'm rambling on about him because I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to take kind of this next step here. At this point, with still some pieces up in the air, I think I'm gonna go back to the defensive back before I really start hammering out kind of the defensive line because I feel like there's still a lot of depth there. And I'm going to take Derwin James as my final defensive back. I feel like that pairing right there, again, I can do multiple things. Not safety. I want to use him as a defensive back.
Oh, okay. My fault.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. But the reason why is because, again, like Brian Branch, I think he can really be a big impact in the run game. And then I think he can blanket tight ends really well with just how big a body he is. I feel like some of the smaller wide receivers that are a little bit more shiftier can sometimes leave him in the dust. But this is a guy that is an excellent consummate pro. I think he was an all-pro this past year, at least a pro bowler. Really good. And I think he's going to continue to do excellent things with Jesse Minter.
I like that a lot. I was kind of hoping that we would leave the Chargers for the end. Maybe I could get Jesse Minter as the last pick there because outside of Derwin James, it's kind of bleak. I thought of Deion Henley maybe if I were desperate at linebacker, but I knocked those out early. And then Khalil Mack if I were desperate at edge rusher, but I have also knocked that position out. So at this point, I still need a couple safeties and a DB, and then it's all defensive front for me. So I'm really honing in on safety or DB at this point. And I just thought of this. This is going to be a complete wild card here, but I'm going to take my last guy who's a defensive back, like just talked about as a defensive back. I'm going to put Travis Hunter here. There's a lot that he's going to be doing this season. And, he might be a pro bowler as a receiver. And that might be a 1 point for me because he's a pro bowler. So if he's a pro bowler, or an all pro at like receiver or something, we won't count that because this is the defensive thing here. But I think he can contend for the Rookies of the Year awards, and that's a big factor here for me. So I'm going to go Travis Hunter there at 20, and then I'm going to attack my first safety spot here. I'm going to get a guy who I believe was a first team or second team All-Pro this season. Certainly was on pace to leading the league in interceptions. I'm going to get Xavier McKinney, a guy who just was an interception magnet to start the year. It was either I think it was 4 straight games where he started the year with an interception and really helped turn a bad Packers defense, even though it had a lot of talent, into a defense that was able to hang with other teams down the stretch.
I like it. So I have 2 open edge spots, and I am stuck.
I think there's 2 guys that you could use at those edge spots.
I'm stuck in between a rock and a hard place because I really can just knock this out. Guys that should be pro bowlers as long as they play. One guy has an injury history. One guy's holding out right now, but Ricky the dog is saying that, hey, both sides are getting really close to maybe a deal happening. So maybe the holdout ends. He participates in training camp. So the 2 guys I'm thinking of, TJ Watt with the Pittsburgh Steelers, already has a Defensive Player of the Year award. And then the guy who led the NFL in sacks last year, give me Trey Hendrickson. Let's fill out the defensive end room. I know there are guys that are approaching, if not over the 30 hump, but the production has been there. There's still huge impact, I think, in the run game as well as kind of the pass game. And as long as they put up solid numbers, they're probably going to be pro bowlers. I think that's kind of the biggest thing here is that getting that 1 point, regardless if they make a first or second team All-Pro, is what I'm banking on with these 2 players.
Yeah, I was wondering when we would get to Trey Hendrickson. Just because I can't envision him not playing, right? The Bengals have to give in kind of at some point and realize that he's a very, very good player, probably top. I would say we nailed the top 6 edge rushers that we selected between the 2 of us. He's certainly among that group there. So they just need to quit playing and really just give him the deal he wants. There's no reason not to. So if you take a look at my picture here, you'll notice I'm missing one group in particular, and that is the defensive line. I think that leaving it to this point, there are a lot of good defensive linemen available. And just like last week where I selected our Carolina Panthers player, Chuba Hubbard, I'm going to take Derek Brown, who missed, we can say almost all, or if not all of last season with an injury. But before that, he set the record for tackles by an interior defensive lineman in 2023, and he was a Pro Bowler. So if he can get back to full health, with the help that the Panthers have invested along that defensive line, I think Pro Bowl could be the floor for Derek Brown this season. That leaves me with quite a few options to choose from for other defensive tackles, defensive linemen. And I think I'm going to go with a player that might not have been on your radar, but certainly was on mine, DeForest Buckner with the Indianapolis Colts. I also just don't want to be selecting a Colts coach at the end here. And Buckner has had many good years. He's got some stuff left in the tank. And I don't mind this pick here at 25.
I'm happy that you made this selection. You had me scared because I was thinking you were going to go another defensive tackle in the same division, and I'm going to take Jeffrey Simmons here with the Tennessee Titans. That was shocking to me. I mean, I think this guy is a little bit more decorated over the past few years, is considered, I think, a top 5, top 10 defensive tackle at his position. And just like the inverse of Vita Vea with Kalijah Kancey. He's more the 3 tech, but they got Tavondre Sweat out of Texas last year. And the way those two were working off each other was really fun to watch. So I think with Cam Ward in his rookie year, with some of the money they've allocated to the defensive side, he could get a little bit more, I would say, airtime to where he might be able to at least make a Pro Bowl. So I like the pick here. And then I'm just trying to locate like what teams we still have even here on the board to see who I have a shot at. And I don't think he plays strong safety, but we just have it listed as safety here. And I have Derwin James in the mix. Like I think I'm going to go Justin Reed with the New Orleans Saints here. Like I think that's the pick. Like the only other safety that really has kind of like me interested at this point that's available is like a Minka Fitzpatrick in Miami. But again, I don't know how well that Miami defense is going to be, and if that's going to make Minka look worse because of just I think some of the inconsistencies or lack of personnel on that side.
I'm a bit shocked because I think there's another pretty good safety left available who I'm going to take once I figure out what team I want to take a defensive lineman from. Maybe I'll take the safety now just so I can think more about it. And he plays on a pretty bad defense. So maybe you weren't thinking about him, but in the same division, Jesse Bates with the Atlanta Falcons, he's going to be my last safety. One of the better safeties across the league throughout his last 2 years where he was franchise tagged with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's been a Pro Bowler since, and I think he's a really good player. Despite being on a pretty bad Falcons defense, he's going to get his, especially with the Bryce Young has taken a step, but he's not an elite QB yet. We don't know what Tyler Shuck is going to be. And while Baker is good, he's going to throw a couple interceptions. So I think Bates is a solid pick there. We're down to 4 teams here. I'm really trying to game theory what coaches I could leave available between the 4 teams that we have. So we have the LA Rams, we have the Miami Dolphins, we have the Chicago Bears, and the Minnesota Vikings. There's a clear winner here for what coach we would want to take at this point. And I'm going to pull up our lads real quick just to see something with a certain team. And in order to, I guess, rob you of Brian Flores, I'm going to go to the Minnesota Vikings here. And with my last player selection, they made a couple of investments this year along both of their fronts, right? On the offensive line, the interior in particular, they have 3 new starters, but they also have 2 new starters on the defensive line. Jonathan Allen, formerly of Washington, and Javon Hargrave, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers. So to me, I just got to, I guess, pick one of those guys at this point. I'm looking up their ages while I'm rambling here just to see who's a little bit younger, a little bit fresher. And it happens to be the Alabama alumnus, Jonathan Allen. So with my final player pick, that's where I'm going to go. I can't see your face right now because I have my personal notes over the podcast feed, but I can only imagine that you're fuming a little bit because you're not going to end up with Brian Flores here.
No, I'm fuming because I kind of panicked at the end of last round. I missed that I hadn't crossed off the Falcons. I had Jesse Bates there, but I'm more upset because I missed that the Vikings were still there, and I could have gotten exactly like you said, Jonathan Allen. I know Hargrave was also there, but I think Allen has a chance to really turn it around. I think that would have made me really happy about kind of my interior defensive line. I think that's going to leave me because I know who I want as like my coach out of the remaining three here that I'm probably going to just do is Kobe Turner isn't considered a interior defensive lineman, is he?
He is.
Is he the interior defensive lineman? Because you have Jared Verse on the outside, you have Kobe Turner, and then it's the Byron Young. Is he a defensive end as well?
Byron Young is the edge rusher. You have Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner as your two interior guys here.
And Kobe Turner, okay, so that's the two I'm thinking of right here. Kobe Turner is actually technically a nose tackle, so I think I have to go Braden Fisk here. Okay, so Braden Fisk, he's going to be my pick here, and he's great. He was the guy the Rams traded up with the Panthers for to get last year. I think he's a really good complement to Jared Verse's skill set on the interior. And then for my coach, I'm going to go Dennis Allen with the Chicago Bears.
Gotcha. And with Chicago, let me just copy paste that one. So you're going Dennis Allen, and I had to be sure I looked it up because I had a feeling I was going to end up with this pick. It is Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator with the Miami Dolphins, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. And so my final pick, pick 32, will be Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator with the Miami Dolphins. How do you think your team turned out here?
I love it in some spots. That second safety spot, I was hoping you weren't going to take Derek Brown there at the turn. I was going to go Mo Rig. I felt really confident with him coming over from Las Vegas and being able to work in a more versatile position that he might have gotten a Pro Bowl nod. So I felt like that kind of threw me for a loop, like I was talking about leading up to that third defensive line spot. I'm happy I have Fisk. I think he is comparable to Jonathan Allen. I think Jonathan Allen is a more common household name for NFL viewers compared to Braden Fisk, but LA is going to get a lot of screen time just with Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and just some of the pieces they have on that side of the roster.
You said you were happy that I passed over Jeffrey Simmons. I was down to those two, and I think Buckner's the better player. I think Simmons, you're right, is a bit more decorated over the last couple of years, but he also was on the worst team in football last year. I don't expect them to make a massive jump, and I think the Colts, who were on the cusp of the playoffs last year, if they sneak in this year with, let's say, the 7th seed wild card, that gives a lot more value to Pro Bowl voting for a guy like Buckner. So that's why I went with that decision there. I think throughout the last week, you and I have been talking, and you had expected me to go Will Anderson first overall. And to be clear, my plan all along was to go Roquan Smith. I was actually going to get both of the linebackers with my first two picks if you didn't take them. How did you feel when I didn't take Anderson first overall? Because I was doing a lot of subliminal messaging, not even subliminal, like outright messaging that Will Anderson was going to be my pick.
Well, I think what it threw me is I think had you taken Will Anderson, you could have gotten – well, you would have not been able to get Roquan because I told you I would have taken Kyle Hamilton, and that's what threw me. He was going to be my strong safety linchpin, and once you took that away, again, that's where it was the last position I kind of dealt with there at the end. Didn't feel super ecstatic about who I chose there. All these other positions, I feel like I can explain from like, hey, like a defensive philosophy standpoint, how these guys are going to mesh in different packages, and it should work in theory. And obviously these are all stars and they would be able to play next to each other regardless. But that was just my thought process throughout this was how is this going to it kind of, what is the word? It's not like counteract. It's more like a symbiotic transition, like the support system that you want from those kind of players rather than it just being two elite guys next to each other.
I fully understand that. For me, my most surprising pick from you was Budda Baker that high. I can see you were trying to attack the DBs early. What was my most surprising pick, I guess, in your opinion?
Most surprising? DeForest Buckner kind of threw me there because I really did think you were going to go Jeffrey Simmons there. Another surprising one was probably Travis Hunter. And it's just because I think it's a long shot, and it's just the fascination with just who he is as a player. But I think there have been talking heads around the league, and I'm sure several teams will do this just to see if it has any effect, but to just run clear out routes against him. That like, hey, if he's like dedicated to this side of the field and he's playing a cover 3, or he is manning up, that you're just forcing him to run vertical routes. Like, you're just going to wear him out throughout the course of the game. And then when it comes down to it in the third and fourth quarter, when you need to step up and make plays, he's going to be gassed. And so obviously his conditioning is phenomenal. He's been able to play both sides of the ball in college. It's just going to be very interesting to see that push to the test with the big boys.
Because I told you beforehand, I have 3 players per team in all 32 teams. And when I got to the Jaguars, because I wanted to take a player, not a coach from them, I thought about like Pro Bowl value and stuff like that. And there's probably not a more not polarizing, but notorious, well-known rookie in this class other than Hunter. Maybe his teammate Shedeur Sanders, but I think Hunter, just because of his popularity, has a decent chance to be a Pro Bowler. And that was kind of my rationale there. Like we said, if he's offensive rookie of the year, we won't count that because this is for the defensive team, right? But if he is a Pro Bowler on the defensive side or is defensive rookie of the year, that certainly would count. I guess the last thing I wanted to say was I was kind of jealous of you taking Gonzalez. I thought you might have overlooked him at some point, and that could be somebody that I get. But you've been a big fan of Gonzalez throughout the process, and I was happy to get his fellow draft mate, Devin Witherspoon, a couple picks after that, because that was the debate that year. Who was the better corner? I think I said Witherspoon. I think you said Gonzalez, and we ended up each taking one of them there.
We did. And what was funny is if you hadn't taken Frankie Louvu, I would have gone Christian Gonzalez and Frankie Louvu there. But I figured Terrell Bernard would be there a little bit later on. And I think he's gotten, I think it was second team All-Pro nod like last year. So I was figuring from a point standpoint, those two would be really, really good.
Yeah, outside of the top couple linebackers, I think that was definitely the most scarce position. And I'm happy to get the safeties that I got late as well. Once you're in the thick of it there, after like pick 20 and on, you kind of have to piece together a plan. Like, all right, these are the specific players, and at this point, this is who I have to take. But I think that's we're good on the teams at this point. For those who are just listening, I'm going to read our teams aloud right now. My team, Jacob's team, I have Vita Vea at nose tackle. I have Derek Brown, DeForest Buckner, Jonathan Allen as defensive linemen. I have Will Anderson Jr., Myles Garrett, Max Crosby as my edge rushers. I have Roquan Smith, Frankie Louvu as my linebackers. For DBs, I have Devin Witherspoon, Travis Hunter, Patrick Surtain, and Sauce Gardner. Safeties, I have Xavier McKinney, Jesse Bates, and my coach is Anthony Weaver. Your team, Steven, Dexter Lawrence, nose tackle, Jalen Carter, down lineman, Jeffrey Simmons, Braden Fisk. Your edge rushers are Micah Parsons, TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson. You have Fred Warner and Terrell Bernard. You have Brian Branch, Derwin James, Christian Gonzalez, Trent McDuffie, Buda Baker, Justin Reed. And your coach is Dennis Allen, one of your favorite coaches amongst the coaching projects you've done. But I think that's going to do it. What is your perfect take coming from our selections here?
I have a defensive player of the year somewhere in my team. I don't know exactly who it is yet, but I think one of my guys are going to be bringing that crown home. So I don't know about you, but my team's stacked. I know we talked a lot of smack leading up to this, but I'm going to stand on business and say my team's like that.
Well, it's interesting because earlier in the offseason, you said somebody on my team is going to be defensive player of the year, a certain edge rusher that I selected early. I'm going to say that I have the sack leader on my team. I think it's legitimately the sack race is between my 3 choices there, Will Anderson, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby. But one of those 3 guys is going to lead the league in sacks. So that's going to be my take.
You see, I got to hedge my perfect takes. Like if
Mhm.
I'm wrong on the Will Anderson take, which I think the year 3 breakout could happen, but I also think that could also be the case for Jalen Carter. So, and I think I talked about it when I made that take. Those two, I think, are really the front runners in my mind. And obviously, there are a lot of the veterans that if they have a phenomenal season where they rack up 20 plus sacks, have a ton of pressures, their team wins 10 plus games, and they're one of the teams talked about going into the postseason. Those are the kind of narratives around that award. And like you hate this, like when you talk about this, it's not just straight up who's the most valuable. A lot of times it's like you have to be attached to a narrative. Like your production has to be pushing your team to success. So that's one thing here that any of these guys could jump on it just based on the circumstance they're playing it.
For sure, they don't give MVP to bad teams. The last time I can think of a quote unquote, I guess, bad team with a guy winning the MVP, Russell Westbrook. And that wasn't even a bad team. They were the 6th seed in the playoffs, if I remember correctly. It's just they weren't a top 4 seed. And that was a huge talking point that year. But guess what? He averaged a triple-double for the first time in 50 years. So he rightfully deserved it that year.
You had Adrian Peterson in 2012 where they were a fringe wild card team where he split it with, I think Manning was the vote, like it was a split. But that's another circumstance. I think hold on, in more recent history, like it's definitely gone to where like the MVP is, but I feel like there's some offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year that can kind of fall in that bucket.
Yeah, those awards for sure. Like if the Bengals miss the playoffs again, but Trey Hendrickson has 22 sacks, he's gonna win it, right? Just because that would be such a Herculean effort on such a poor defense. But that's gonna do it for our defensive team draft. I'm kind of disappointed because obviously we can't do another one until next season, and these have been fun to do. But next week we'll be back with probably the safety Mount Rushmore and then something else. And then we're really going to ramp into division breakdowns because while it may still seem far away, we're approaching the start of the season ever more every week. I believe the Panthers training camp starts next week. So we're almost back in full football mode. But until then, you can find us on Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, like, dislike, do whatever you got to do and keep pounding.